Says we're streaming live.
Mhm. Okay, so I believe we are now live and
Says we're streaming live.
all right. So welcome, Michael Vann. So great to have you on. And so we are here today talking with Michael Vann, who's the president of the Vann Group, and they are business consultants and also specialize in helping companies navigate valuations and mergers and acquisitions. So worked with Michael for a number of years and very excited to have this conversation right now. So thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to be on YouTube live with you.
Yeah.
It's my first time doing this, so
it will be super easy and really fun. So
good.
So we'll just keep an eye on the chat. So if anybody has questions for us, definitely feel free to drop it in the chat, and we will try to keep our eye on that as we are talking overall. But Michael, one of the things we were just I was hoping to just kind of get a little bit of information from you on is kind of what you're seeing in the marketplace right now in terms of like what's going on. Like, are people looking to buy? Are people looking to sell? What are things like right now, particularly with small businesses?
Yeah, it's kind of a fascinating market. So when COVID hit, like our whole world froze on the M&A side, right? It was like March 18th or something, and every deal we had was like, okay, we're taking a step back. We're not going to look at this. And we lost a couple of them, and one was just on hiatus, but it came back. But when it was kind of a fascinating time, right? Maybe like May 1st, May 2nd, right around that time frame, people suddenly started popping their heads up, and we suddenly started getting a lot of the inquiries in from the buyers that we always do, these private equity groups or search funders or something, who are saying, oh, we're looking to buy. So it was like nothing had ever changed in their perspective, at least on the search side. On the sales side, there's been this whole discussion in our world of succession, transition planning, M&A, about this coming wave of baby boomers who are going to retire, and we've kept waiting and waiting and waiting for it, and it's been a trickle, because why get out when things are good?
Sure.
Well, pandemics and other types of things like that accelerate trends. So suddenly it's been really busy with sellers, of small, mid-sized businesses who are now thinking, you know what, it's time to get out. I don't want to continue to deal with this. I'm worried about health. I'm worried about financial. I'm not going to go through the process of trying to recover and wait another 2-3 years. So we've seen a tremendous uptick in interest in sellers going to the market. So it's been an interesting time from that standpoint as to activity, because it's been heightened and not what we would have expected with, half the world shut down still.
Yeah, that's interesting. And does it, in terms of like the businesses that you're seeing come onto the market, does it feel like it's a bit of like fire sale, or do they feel like they're prepared to sell their companies? Like, is there a lot of work that they need to be doing, or?
A lot of the conversations are definitely in the work stage.
Mhm.
What do we need to do to start to get prepared for this? We're not ready to go necessarily right away. Where of others, it's like, we're done. They don't care what we need to do. It's not necessarily a fire sale yet, because they haven't seen valuations or numbers, but it's kind of like, no, I'm done. I'm ready to go. So let's start this process and get it to market. So it's been kind of a mix. We were on a call this morning with a group who's looking at like a 3 to 5 year window, and they're in retail space, online and that type of stuff, and they're trying to figure out how do you pivot and position to make that business attractive. So everyone's going to kind of go through some of these machinations as to the transformation that they need to make the market, make the business marketable.
Yeah. And when you're talking with companies who are in that stage of just starting to think about like, okay, 3 to 5 year window, what are the things that I need to be concentrating on? What are some of the things? Are there like, specific things that you're like are non-negotiables that they need to do, or does it really vary between business and market?
It really varies between business and market, but as there are certain fundamentals we look for that are going to drive that, and it certainly will. We always talk about revenue size, industry attractiveness, that discretionary cash flow, which, you know, are going to kind of ping who your buyers might be. But we continue to emphasize the importance of building those leadership and management teams, um, because they're so critical for the continuity of the business.
Mhm.
You know, and who owns that customer relationship, and who's going to get things done when, you know, our owner exits. So that's usually the starting point, you know, for our conversations with someone. Well, who's in place?
Yeah.
If the conversation is, well, not really anybody,
Mhm.
you know, it's a problem.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I would imagine that also that could shift or also have people thinking about different things as they're trying to figure out how do I staff, who do I keep and who do I let go and, who do I invest in and who do I not. Um, that I feel like I've seen a lot of companies and heard a lot of companies talk about like, oh, we're kind of like back to startup mode. And I've talked to some owner founders who are like loving it right now because they're like back in the weeds. So like the things that they had given up, they now get to do again because it's like COVID becomes an excuse to like grab all that stuff back that is kind of like the fun stuff that you might not do when you're kind of being more like strategic or have more breathing room. Um, so any advice for any owner founders who are thinking about leaving, but also having fun doing marketing or, kind of getting back into sales or,
Yeah, I know it's great that you're doing that for this transition period as you figure things out, but don't forget, when you're building value, it's all the objective is to position the company so it can run without yourself. And, you know, we're all back in the weeds at some level, today, but don't get too content there if you're looking at an exit in the next few years, because those things are going to come back to bite you. Would be the advice on that,
yeah,
because you can get real comfortable and logically rationalize, well, we don't really need the bookkeeper, you know, we can save this, or we can do this in house, we'll just move things around, and you can really start to break your organizational structure,
yeah,
right? Because that's how they got, you know, as you know, over the years, you're like, okay, we're going to start moving people around and giving different duties and responsibilities, and suddenly that org chart is a mess as to who does what and who's accountable for things. So, you know, say no.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like lately I've been saying a lot of like, it's more important to say no than to say yes, to know when to be like, no, this is just like not a good idea, or I've been here before, I've made this mistake before, and just like resist that urge. Cause I think it's COVID gives us a lot of excuses for like maybe some bad behavior or some
Uh,
suboptimal behavior. So,
one of the exercises we did with a group last week was a start, stop, continue.
mhm,
You know, just looking at, all right, where's our world right now, and where we see things going. So if this is the direction we think the world's going and we're not sure, what do we need to start doing? What do we need to stop doing? And what should we be continuing? Because that's actually been successful for us. And it was, you know, it's a really good exercise because people have to think about that. You know, like, yeah, we've gotten into some bad habits, you know, during the course of this, because, you know, we were in this whole triage period, and now we're getting into this emergence stage. It's like we need to get rid of those bad habits and find those good ones that we should be doing that are going to help
yeah.
us get to
Yeah, well,
whatever.
and I think that that's helpful too because it also helps you identify not just the bad behaviors, but also the things that you put into place that actually are going to build long-term value in the company that maybe you want to keep doing, like figuring out e-commerce for the first time or restaurants kind of building their mobile delivery business. I've talked to some restaurants who are like, oh, if we could keep this this mobile business, or even half of or a third of this mobile business, it's so much more than we were doing before. We've kind of had to build it out of necessity, but if we could just keep it and kind of steward it along, it could give us some value coming out of this that we might not have
Yeah,
had
and
before.
those are some of the, you know, and like that industry is a perfect example of some of the transitions they've had to go through. You know, if you weren't doing takeout before or mobile delivery or some, you know, you've made that transition pretty quickly to that pivot, and all the processes and systems and everything that's had to go into making those moves. Even something like as simple as outdoor dining. If you
Mhm.
haven't had outdoor dining before, the whole flow of your business changes when suddenly you're going outside that premise into that, is the staffing and what do we need to do for prep and all that. So it's been wild to watch.
Yeah.
In a lot of the restaurants we've talked to said, like, we'd love to be able to keep this outdoor dining next year.
Yeah.
People enjoyed it. It's, it's something different for us here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And I've heard some of the same for like maybe manufacturers who have been, had been very dependent on distribution and all of a sudden are now having to be direct sellers through e-commerce that, kind of same thing of like they put up kind of like a band-aid solution just to get something up so people could click to purchase. And now there's this feeling of like, oh, actually, this is a lot higher margin than some of the distribution business that we were doing. So maybe as we're looking to build the company for the future, maybe we put more emphasis on direct to consumer. We have more control over the relationships. We have more control over the pricing. It might not be the same like top line revenue, but it might actually create a more profitable company. And is there any of that you're seeing? They're kind of like looking at financials with companies and thinking through that all important cash flow and
Oh, yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of conversations on what channels of selling today are, the ones we need to go through. And to your point, a lot of the retail, I won't call them retailers, but they've been product companies who are now looking at going like, all those stores we were selling to were shut.
Yeah.
And we don't really love Amazon because Amazon's been brutal to deal with. So they're starting to build their own, online portals for sales, and so they're balancing that out. And if they've had inventory, they probably did great during this period of time because people were home and were spending money on stuff to do. So
yeah, and I feel like people are particularly kind of like exploratory now when they're purchasing and are kind of looking to support small, but kind of looking to make their dollar count. So um I think it's a cool opportunity for people to figure out some of those like what do we need to stop doing that's hurting us, but also what do we need to continue doing and continue investing in because we did it as like a little experiment to see if it working, and now we actually need to kind of double down and invest in it and turn it.
it's kind of interesting, if you start to think about it from the brand perspective, a lot of those companies are really not known companies.
Yeah.
Like from a consumer standpoint, I might go and I might buy one of their products, but we've never really thought about their product per se.
Mhm.
So now they have to think about, not just branding this product, but branding the company so people know to go to their channel, which is, a whole different thought process for them. If you've been selling to retailers over the years, they're just like, yeah, we like those blankets or those pillows or whatever. That's great. But now we have to convince people to come to our site.
Yeah, and also from an experience standpoint, make sure that they have a really strong experience to reinforce that brand connection. Because I feel like there's like the promoting trial piece of it of like, how do we get them there in the first place? And then there's the like, okay, how do we make sure that they can continue to come back to us in the same way that they would come back to that retailer? And I feel like it's definitely causing a lot more people to think about customer experience and training their team and what are like little things that we could do that would be inexpensive just to kind of give the customer more of a sense of who we are, what our background is, why we're different from the competition. I think that right now everybody's so like hyper focused that it's also a great opportunity to like really make an impression right now. And then it doesn't, like once you've made an impression early on, it doesn't take quite as much work to like sustain and steward that. So it's a lot harder.
Just, for a lot of them, it's going to be the challenge is building those muscles internally that they know how to do that. It's okay to get one sale, but how do you continually get multiple sales and get those referrals and, align operations with that brand promise that you've put out there. One of our clients, we were talking, they're used to shipping to big box retailers.
Right.
And suddenly now all their fulfillment, systems and operations are built towards that. Now they're dealing with, individual orders. So it changes the whole fulfillment process. And if you screw that up, you've now created that bad experience. So yeah, great website looks good and the product's nice, but you've really messed up because you sent me the wrong thing or went to the wrong place or was 2 weeks late, all those things. And they now have to think about it, that extension of the brand from not just, the the shiny things that we think about, but also the things that go back and validate that brand promise.
Yeah, yeah, everything becomes a lot more, um, again, kind of going back to where we started about the people, making sure that you have the right people for kind of like this, whatever you're investing in for this new opportunity, making sure that you're not just kind of taking people who were a good fit over there and just slotting them into something new that maybe they don't actually have like the training or the skill set for, that you either need to invest in training them and making sure that they understand that and kind of understand their new role, or make sure that you have people who are like the right fit for that more like maybe customer facing, customer service piece of things.
And those are things that, like, when our buyers are going to come in to look, they're looking, at those things. So, like, does it have a, direct correlation, like dollars to the bottom line on the valuation? No, but where it impacts on the multiples and
Hmm.
on things that when people look at it and go, all right, well, what do we need to fix?
Yeah.
We talked before, it's like the house, right? You're buying a house looks pretty. We bring the inspector, and what's the inspector see? And goes, HVAC is 15 years old, and you've got, knob and tube here for electric, and they start to dig into those types of things, and they go, yeah, well, that's going to cost us X, so we're going to drop our price. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
important.
Do you think that there's also potential for companies who, from a strategic standpoint, companies that, let's say, like already have that, let's say customer service or fulfillment piece figured out, that they might be looking for companies who might have something good but are struggling to get that infrastructure, that maybe they could see like some opportunity in some of those like fixer uppers or
Yeah, no, they definitely do. The problem, if you're that seller, they're going to pay fixer upper prices.
yeah, yeah,
And when we're seeing things like when everyone asks, well, what's going on with valuations and things post COVID, we don't know yet.
yeah,
I've heard numbers all over the place as to what valuations happen. I've heard what they can finance, what they can't finance. But if you're in a position of weakness and the business shows weak, like it needs help, these times are when people are going to just absolutely beat you to death over the price, because they know you're in a position of weakness. So I wouldn't say yet it's fully a buyer's market, but it's probably not too far from truly being a buyer's market across the board.
yeah. When you're talking with companies about kind of like their brand, kind of like the intangible asset column of like their brand and their marketing and their sales relationships and things like that, are there specific things that you're looking for, either as like red flags or as green lights, to say that they're like good to go in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, and I think some of it starts with the basics. Like, what do you see from a visual standpoint? So when I go to a website, has the website been updated recently, or is it still from 2012 or 2013? Is the social media presence there? Are they doing things actively? Those are kind of some of the initial things that you see. It's like the paint and wallpaper type of stuff in the house.
Yeah,
You know,
the
so
curb appeal.
yeah, I mean, so if it looks good, you go, okay, well, they're at least taking care of these aspects of it. If I don't see those things, now I start to go, what else is missing here?
Hmm.
What else is happening underneath the surface? 'Cause, the brand is an extent, is kind of at some level the paint and wallpaper, but everything that goes into it is where companies really start to dig deep. So if it starts to look bad, if the initial first impression is bad, someone's going to come in with a far more negative view than someone
Hmm.
who looks great. Love what you did with the place.
Yeah, yeah. And then maybe might be a little bit more forgiving if they're like, "Oh, this might not be totally where we
Yeah,
wanted," or yeah, it just feels like a smaller investment or
exactly. Yeah, they're looking at that capital expenditure. What's it going to take to get this where we want it to?
Mhm. We often talk about like brand as your reputation, about like kind of there's the piece of it that you can control, like the marketing and the website and kind of the look and feel of it, but then there's also that, that really at the end of the day, people have to buy into and find consistency and clarity in what you're putting out there. And how do like sellers or you as a consultant start to kind of understand like what is that conversation going on about the company? Is there due diligence that's happening there?
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of due diligence that goes into that. The bigger the company, the more engaged it is. But you take like again, using the restaurant as an example. As soon as someone's looking at a restaurant, what's the first thing they do? They go to eat there, as like they secret shop it, right? And so,
Yeah.
and they're highly skeptical about what they're looking at. So they're questioning how the food is plated. How did the waitress, take my order? How quickly did it come out? Were the bathrooms clean? Right?
Mhm.
All these little things that go into it, because that's the brand
Yeah.
too. It's like, what's the experience that happened with it? So your buyers do that instinctively on the first time that they start to look at things. When you get deeper into the due diligence, like some of our big manufacturers and things like that, they hire outside firms that will come in and interview customers and secret shop and you know those things, because if the customer experience and the relationships aren't where they want them to be, they'll walk,
Yeah.
because it's the most critical component. And if people aren't happy, you've got big issues.
Yeah. So are there things again like the 3 to 5 year out picture if people are starting to think about like, okay, how do I start to get this thing to the point where that customer experience is really strong and people are looking at it? Are there I feel like, to go back to the house analogy, there are usually like a few key things that people will tell you, like really invest in, like make sure your kitchen and your bathrooms are really good. You want stainless steel appliances are hot right now, or open plan, that there are a few things that like buyers are looking for. Do you have any early sense, like post COVID, of what the stainless steel appliance of the M&A world will be?
I think a lot of it is going to come down to, from like that stainless steel thing, is the data side of it.
Hmm.
How much do you really know about your customers?
Yeah.
That reach and that connectivity with them and all those things. So like, do you have a customer management system in place that you're actively doing that? Because I know if you're doing that, then you're aligned, your brand is aligned with what you're saying. But
Mhm.
if you don't have the data today and the continuity of connectivity with it, and it's really hard to say that, oh, we're a customer centric company.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
can you tell me who your customer is? No, we think we
Yeah.
can, but we can't back that up. So
Yeah.
I think
Or you're
that's,
really good at those like one-off personal relationships, but it's not scalable or sustainable. Again, you remove a couple of key employees or an owner out of that equation, and all of a sudden it starts to fall apart. That it's not systematized enough. And I think data
yeah,
helps just point you towards a more systematic approach to those things.
yeah.
Uh,
They want to know like who owns that relationship.
yeah.
And if it's Joe owns it, or Sally, rather than, well, no one owns it, the company owns it. We manage it, collectively, and we can prove that because we've got the data, we've got the loyalty to the mechanisms in place. It's a different conversation. Right? I
Yeah.
don't have that. I can check that risk off the box. You know.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I mean, it's one of the things that I often have to like really also prepare my team for, because like our company works with you know pretty much all small businesses, second stage companies that are, really trying to build infrastructure, but oftentimes it's not quite there yet. And often like the one thing I prepare people for is like, you might think that they have this data, but like they don't.
Right.
They don't have the data. And I feel like it's the one thing that small businesses often neglect. Like it's on the wish list, but it very rarely makes it on like the front burner of like those things that we, like we just put up with bad data, and we don't, survey our customers, and we don't, systematize some of that stuff. We go very much on gut. And um but it also doesn't really take too much to get some like bare bones infrastructure.
No, it just takes the discipline. As you know, like we work with groups, we build scorecards, and you come, all right, what is it you need to know, these leading indicators about the business? And we can come up with a list and say, great, where's the data? Well, we don't we don't really have that. And a lot of them don't even really have good financial data. Never mind, digging into it. We sold a software company years ago, and they couldn't tell me how many reoccurring customers they had.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I don't know. We just send out agreements every year and see who comes back. Well, you can't tell me how long that person's been a customer. No,
Yeah.
it's logical, things to know about the business that most small businesses don't think about it. So that's why we always tell everyone, if you're going to sell, someone think about it from the perspective of a buyer. What is it that who knows nothing about your business is going to want to know?
Yeah.
Where do you find those answers?
Yeah.
And if you
Yeah.
don't
And I,
have those answers, you better get them.
yeah, that's a great point. Okay, cool. So I think that's a great place to stop. And we'll probably give people a lot of food for thought. And next week we will continue the conversation, same time, same place. So noon on Mondays in August, we'll get back here and continue the conversation. And if folks have questions, definitely feel free to drop them to me or join live and put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them. So thank you
Sounds
so
great.
much, Michael. Really appreciate the insight and enjoyed the conversation.
Definitely. Talk to you next week.
All right.
All right.